Hi everyone, my name is Charlene and I'm the director of All the Splendor of the Years.
Charlene, welcome to Dallas, Texas.
Thank you.
And this is your second time here.
Yes.
So what has been your experience so far in the limited amount of time that you've been here in Dallas?
I love Dallas. I initially came out here for a location scout, and I got a chance to know a little bit about the film community here and the music community, and I think it's a great city. It's so energetic, people are so friendly, and I'm happy to be back here a second time. Hopefully this time I can get some barbecue in.
Oh yeah, let's
Didn't
do
have
that.
time last time, yeah.
Okay. Well, so how did Dallas get on your radar the first time around? What was it that attracted you to actually come out and do some location scouting?
It was we were doing a short film for an indie artist based out here. Her name is Sarah Jaffe. I think she came out of Denton, and I think she's from Red Oak. So we came out to try to work on a project with her, and she showed us around, and we got to know. We reached out to some of the production folks here, drove all over the city, drove all between Denton and Red Oak. Met a bunch of people, and it was really great. We stayed here for like less than a week, but yeah, I thought I got a chance to see quite a bit of Dallas. I didn't get a chance to eat, do the typical touristy stuff,
right.
But otherwise, my impression was great. And I think it actually inspired me to try to come back here again, to come to this festival, ideally. So yeah.
Cool, and we are glad you're here. So I know that your schedule is pretty packed, but I hope you do have time to eat at this point.
Oh yes.
This time around.
I'll make time this time. Yeah.
Okay, good. And so before we actually get into your film that's screening here at the Asian Film Festival of Dallas, this was for a thesis. Right?
Yeah, this is my short film from USC grad school. I got recruited to work in animation before I got a chance to formally graduate. So I went away for a few years and then came back to LA to finish it. And I got some support from USC to shoot it on 35mm film, which I think is very special and very rare these days. So I'm very proud of my movie. I'm really proud I got to make it the way I wanted to be made. Sort of in a more old-fashioned, classic Hollywood way for epic romances, and I try to steer away from a typical student film. I wanted to go for something kind of big and dramatic and melodramatic. So yeah, I'm really proud of this film. I'm glad I was able to screen it here today and show everybody in Dallas.
And I'm impressed by that. What was it that helped you maintain the discipline, or was instrumental in helping you make the film the way that you wanted to make on your terms?
I think just the passion for the films that I love, that I like. I don't see movies like that anymore, and I want to see movies like that. I hope people watch it and feel something nostalgic for it. I also feel very close to Taipei, Taiwan, I'm from the city Taipei. I shot my movie in various locations where I grew up as a kid. So just wanting to go home and wanting to go make this movie with places that mean something to me is what drove me to finish it, and to leave Los Angeles, to get out of United States and to shoot somewhere that means something to me. And it turned out to be very rewarding that way. I got to work with family members, I got to work with friends, I got to showcase Taipei, which I think is one of the most beautiful most beautiful cities in the world. I grew up there. I think the nightlife, the night lights it's very unique. It's a very unique look. I grew up with that. I'm also a cinematographer, so it influences the way I see light and the way I see composition and movement. So to me, it's a very inspiring city, even though there's somewhat of a distance because I left Taiwan to study in the United States. I think that kind of yearning for home maybe is what kind of pushed me to make a movie that challenged me, and that was a little bit different than the norm.
And Miss Charlene's too humble to say it, so I'll just drop it for her. But she actually worked at Pixar during her time away at school, and so she worked on Toy Story 3 and she worked on Brave.
Yeah.
So, but you wouldn't have said it, so I had to say it for you.
Cool.
But so, what kind of response have you received from Taiwan, either from their government or the tourism district, about your film? If you got
I have not had an official Taiwan screening yet, okay. And I do want to actually bring it back to Taiwan, and I haven't had a cast and crew screening yet, so I want to bring it back to Taiwan. My DP and one of my other collaborators are all from the United States. they're non-Chinese, and so I hope to bring them back to Taiwan to have a really good screening. And maybe when I do that, then I'll try to bring more attention to it, because I'd love to show it again in 35 millimeter. It needs to be screened in 35 millimeter. I shot it on 35 millimeter. I quality checked on 35 millimeter. I color timed on 35 millimeter, which is, putting a film negative into chemical baths and waiting a week for it to develop, and then speaking to the color timer, that shot is a little bit too dark. That shot needs to be less blue. So it was a labor, it was like a labor of love. So I hope to bring it back to Taiwan and show people there hopefully soon.
I've heard the debate about the pros and cons for shooting on 35 millimeter versus digital, but I just want to hear from you personally. What is it about 35 millimeter that just makes it so attractive to you that you just are uncompromising on working with it?
I love movies. I'm a very big cinema fan. It's very hard for me to find a movie I hate. I see any kind of movie, and there's always something about it that I love. And I think cinema language is its very own thing. And I think that's kind of getting lost in the digital age. I think some of that attention to quality, attention to just a certain meticulous detail is sort of lost. Detail in lighting, detail in production design, detail in color. I think 35 millimeter film is very romantic. I think the colors are very rich, and we grew up watching movies, and so there's something I think intuitive in people that kind of just responds to movies made on 35 millimeter differently than digital. To me, digital just feels a lot more like when you're shooting on negative, you have to be very careful about how many takes. You have to be very careful about your timing. You don't want to waste negative. But when you shoot digital, for me, you can just shoot as much as you want. And something to me is precious is lost in that process. I don't know. 35 is beautiful. It's there's nothing in the world like it. I hope there's like vinyl records. I hope people find something about it to save it somewhere down the line.
You brought a good point in the sense that during the production you have to be as very efficient as you can because of how expensive and how precious it is. So what safeguards or what measures do you have in place to kind of help minimizing waste?
Pre-production, just knowing exactly what shots you have that you want to make sure your script is, how you want it to be, make sure your collaborators are on the same page, they understand. All of my collaborators knew how to shoot, my DP knew how to shoot on film very well, and, understood the risks, understood the conditions, and so we spoke very carefully about the lighting in every location. They asked me earlier, but we ran into a typhoon, a hurricane in the middle of one of our shoot days, and it showed up on film. It was when it was raining hard, and it looked very beautiful. So we were really lucky, but that stuff you can't really prepare for. But 35 for me, I didn't shoot coverage to death. I knew exactly which shots I wanted. I knew exactly what mood I was going for. So when I was watching the frame, I made sure to not waste a single take. When my editor got my film, my dailies in, he realized he didn't have much room to do anything because I kind of pre-edited in my head, and that discipline I think helps me very much as a filmmaker, and I think it helps my career in every way. And although it's a more classical film language, I think if you know the basics, everything after that is not hard to understand and to appreciate. But a lot of planning, a lot of it's cool when you hold the roll of film in your hands. It's a different. It's not like a flash card. It's literally a 1,000-foot mag of film, and
a tangible baby.
It's a tangible baby. Yeah, it's very heavy, and you need a lot of it to shoot even just a short film. And so you treat it like it's a very precious. It's like vintage wine almost. Mm-hmm. You don't want to waste. You don't want to waste and drink it recklessly. You want to savor it. So I think just being able to touch it, I think, will give you that feeling.
Now, I hear it said, I've heard it said it takes a village to make a film, and you've kind of alluded to a lot of pre-production work, a lot of conversations with your collaborators on being on the same page. But a lot of times, just even with communication in general, sometimes things still get lost. So how do you, what helps you become an effective communicator, whether you're speaking or writing? What helps you get to the same page? Is it just the number of conversations, or what is it that you do to really make it easy for people to understand your vision?
I think in an ideal world, they talk a lot about casting actors and finding the perfect actor, auditioning actors for the perfect role. But I actually think it's really important to cast your crew as well. I'm really very picky about who I like to collaborate with, and I think a successful film is a collaboration where you can't tell who did what. It becomes something else. Two people come together and they make something that's none of them they could make on their own. And my main collaborators for this movie, my editor, my DP, and my sound designer were very much friends I knew. I know a lot of talented people from USC, but these friends, they just clicked. They got me. They understood what I was going for. So I think who you cast is very important. I think it minimizes the disagreements you might have in pre-production, disagreements in style. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just a risk. You want to find someone who will bring something different to your work. Mm-hmm. But I find that challenge fun, and I think it's invigorating. As long as you can manage that in pre-production and it doesn't go out of hand and they don't quit, they don't hate you, they don't stop in the middle of it. I think who you choose to collaborate with is extremely, for me, it's extremely important. I hope when I make a feature film, I can work with my friends again and have a long career together like that.
Okay, so, and especially since you plan on shooting more 35 millimeter film, it kind of dictates that you work with the same crew.
That's going to be hard, to be honest. I think it's not practical to shoot on film, a feature on film. Maybe another short. It would look a little bit different. I would have to justify being shot on film. Like this film, the style that it was, the genre that it was, it's as a romantic drama is perfect. Mm-hmm. But it kind of depends on what the next film is about, and it's quite hard to. But it's really cheap to rent film cameras now. It's much cheaper than digital cameras for sure.
Wow, and I did see that you had some funding backing, but since 35 millimeter is expensive and you kept costs low through the cheap rental cameras and things like that.
Cheap rental cameras, yeah.
What else did you do to be able to help finance this film?
For financing, it was word of mouth. I budgeted that. I was trying to get money through USC sponsorships, and then some of it comes from me, myself. And, over the years, that's also one of the challenges is to keep going when you run out of money. And then, so I end up putting a lot of my own money into it. But yeah, just getting sponsorships from Kodak, getting sponsorships from camera houses. In Taiwan, shooting in Taiwan is cheaper than America. The camera crew comes with the package. And there's no production insurance, there's no location fees. I think shooting out of Los Angeles, which is very much a company town where they understand how the business works, saves you a lot of money. Okay. And I think maybe in the United States, maybe for feature films, there are, I think, film commissions that offer a lot to help.
Right.
For short films, I'm not sure, but I think for feature films, it's much
Never hurts
easier.
to ask.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of locations, you got some spectacular locations in Taiwan. How did you get those? Was it just because it was part of the packaging, or did you have connections? Like the hotel is well known.
Oh, the hotel is famous. Yeah. So I kind of grew up as a kid eating hamburgers at their restaurant, and so they've seen me around as a kid. And when I was initially it was going to be a smaller, much more intimate hotel, but my producer was like, if you're going to shoot at a hotel in Taiwan, there's only one that is the most cinematic hotel, and it looked great. It was the color red. It had this old Chinese pagoda look. Yeah. They didn't charge us anything. We just went up and spoke to the manager at the entranceway, and we're like, we'd like to shoot a film here. Is this possible? They're like, what are you shooting? What's going to happen here? And then we asked a bunch of questions, and they were like, all right, it should be fine. It's cool. Just come on. I was like, but we're going to be shooting from this time to that time. It's How
many hours was that?
I think for that scene we shot, I think it was from 10 a.m. to 3 a.m. or something like that. 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. So they were like, oh, that's all right. There's going to be nobody there to interrupt you, so that's fine. But the club scene was also in one of their locations, their bars, and so we did rent out that space, and we, I think because we rent out that space, they were able to let us they knew we were shooting already. They knew we were there already, and we just asked if we could shoot at that. And they're like, yeah. And we were shooting that day. They were like, oh, the manager came out to check it out on his way out. He's like, you should also shoot over there because the fongjing, the scenery is very nice there. Nice. It would look good on camera. And all he wanted was the DVD copy to see how it turned out. And it turned out, yeah. I was like, okay. So, yeah, we just asked they were cool about it. I don't know. I love shooting in Taiwan. People are very friendly there, and very hospitable. You just never know, since it doesn't hurt to ask and doesn't hurt to try. I don't think it's a very jaded city yet for shooting.
Yet. Gotcha. So as a director, I've seen directors sometimes they like to be in on the action, like among the actors to kind of visualize, and then other times I see directors kind of sitting closer to the camera. What's your style, and why does that matter? I think my background as a camera person makes me want to stick to the monitor a little bit more. I'd love to be able to let go of that and actually be closer to the actors and pay a little bit more attention to in the moment feelings. But when I was making this movie, I knew the mood was extremely important. I knew that because we were shooting on film, I had to make sure the framing, make sure what they were doing on camera looked right and what they were emoting was getting through. So for this film, I was very much at the monitor, but it's kind of nice because then I can kind of be in the movie. When I watch a monitor, I become very focused, and I kind of just like hone in on the film, and I can see it, I can feel it, how it's going to turn out, and that's my style. But I'd love to be able to like let that go and be like less fearful and just work with the actors someday. I really liked all of your actors in this film.
Oh, thank you.
How did you find them?
It was very difficult because they have to be of a certain age where they look young enough to pass sort of young, but then old enough to not be too old. It's easy to find young people to shoot any movie. You can always cast non-actors. It's older people, much older people. They exist as character actors in Taiwan, but that 30s, 40s is very, very difficult to find, especially leading men, because they all... In Asia, or at least in Taiwan, it's still not a super respectable way to make a living. So they either go to China, where you can make a lot more money, or they change careers after they hit a certain age, like 30, and then they just quit. So my producer saw this actor do this one scene of like kind of a depressed alcoholic guy, and he's like, maybe how about this guy? Like, maybe we can see, let me show you a clip that he did. Maybe that's like the right mood you're going for. And they all ended up being a little bit younger than what I originally wanted, but they brought other things to it, which I really liked. So I had a casting director as well, but I don't know. Yeah, hopefully someday I can work like non-actors and be able to just let them go in front of the camera. But these were people who were experienced and had some experience in the industry.
Why would you want to work with non-actors?
Well, for the next movie I want to do is a different type of a romance. It's more like kind of an internet romance based on the gaming community. So it's a much younger crowd, and it's a little more, romance in today's age is a complete opposite end of the spectrum to my short film.
Right.
But I was very inspired by Gamergate and how that thing blew up, how that whole thing blew up between these two, this boy and a girl. It was a romance that went bad and it blew up, and it kind of created this crazy scene they call it Gamergate. And I'm more fascinated by what happened in the intimate aspects of their relationship, and so I think it might be kind of cool to work with non-actors, people who are not trained, and it's a different generation. The emoting is different. I think less trained the better, the more real the better for that film.
Yeah, I've always found that irony, because it's like whenever I hear auditions or whenever I see roles, it's like, oh, well, that actor or actress kind of is like the character, and so we'll cast them for the part. But then I'm like, you say you want professional actors, but then it's not really acting because it's not much of a stretch. So it's always been that paradox for me.
Yeah, I think it always depends on the film. For this film, because it had this old-fashioned Hollywood feel, I thought it was okay. It was like, I needed experienced actors, but I would love to be able, for my next project, I would love to be able to work with a totally different experience, but also similar, thinking about romance in a different age and a different time.
Sure.
With like a lot of technology being in the middle of it, how intimacy evolves under that.
Now, since Gamergate is kind of in the technological
yeah.
side, the Gamergate project, does that mean that you would be open to shooting it digitally?
Yeah, probably. That one would probably digitally, not just the Red or the Alexa, probably all types of digital formats for that one, because it would take place online as well as in real life. Yeah, I know. I would have to give in. I would have to give in to the
dark side.
To the dark side.
But I do want to come back to this little masterpiece that you have here. How did you come up with the title?
I found a bunch of Chinese idioms that kind of captured a certain nostalgic feeling, and it feels sort of like the idea that it takes place in one day, in one night, that after the nighttime, the morning, things change. And so the Chinese title has something to do with like the dying glimmer of the light. And then I found some way to translate that into something that calls back to the melodramas of the 60s or the 40s. And I just made it as fancy as possible.
And adding the U in splendor.
And made it British sounding as much. Yeah, I went all the way for that. I wanted to capture an old-fashioned melodrama, but it started with a Chinese title.
Okay, and then translate. Because I wanted to have a cup of tea as I was watching watching your film.
A cup of tea.
Yeah, a cup of tea, just to kind of
little snack.
Enjoy it with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're the writer director. How did you come up with this idea? I'm always just impressed how you can just take a blank sheet of paper and just fill it with a compelling storyline.
For me, it was like, this was inspired by my parents' generation and their friends, and a lot of them, when they started to retire, when they were older, they were retiring kind of early, so they sort of like reverted back to their high school, college age behavior, because their kids are grown up and out of the house, and they're retired, so they just go home to Taiwan, and they actually go and kind of party. Like, it's nice. It's a nice social scene. I think it's a nice way to, stay engaged and stay in touch with your friends, and you can fly between the United States and Taiwan. Started with that, seeing my family. I thought it was just my family, but then I noticed my friend's family had that. My friend's parents were sort of like that. I went to one of their karaoke parties one night, and I saw what was happening. It literally felt like I was at a high school dance, like a prom, where people were gossiping, pointing fingers. My friend's mom was the queen bee, and she was I wanted to capture that feeling a little bit of just coming home to something that's so different than what you remembered. Part of it is my nostalgia, for missing Taiwan, wanting to go home, feeling like it's always changing. It's a city that's constantly Taipei is always changing, in flux, and so just combining what I saw from stories of friends and families, and also my own feeling. And my movie is, more than anything, is about a mood. It's about capturing that mood of a certain loss that you can't ever recapture.
And of course, you involved your family to help with you on this project.
Oh yeah.
So who was involved, and where can we find them?
My mom was involved in part of the pre-production. Well, she was probably most helpful in getting the hotel stuff, because they knew her from so many years ago. So she kind of arranged that. And then my brother, he was in it. He played one of the young gentlemen of the young couple, and he also helped produce it as well. And we shot in my house, outside of my house, my doorway, when they were speaking. And yeah, it felt to me, when I watched this film, it's such a personal experience. But it's I don't think it's that obvious to everybody else. But to me, it's a very, very. For me, it feels like a family, like a family project almost. I had to, I remember I was writing the script in Taiwan, and it's difficult because I don't write in Chinese. I can speak Chinese, I can kind of read Chinese, and I can understand the dialogue well and pacing, but I had to write it in English, and then I had to get it translated, and then I had to read it out loud to my family. So they had to give me feedback on my movie. So that was a big part of how this was. My family is a big part of the inspiration for this particular film.
And clearly your family is supportive of you as an artist, but were they always supportive? Because you know how you mentioned that sometimes in some families it's not quite respectable. So was it always this way for you?
No, I think I started filmmaking pretty late. I did not take a single camera or film class until film school. Right before I went to USC Film School, I did take one 16mm class, filmmaking class. That was the first time I picked up the camera, and I just fell in love with it. And I just realized that I just have a connection to it. I understand, how the camera works to tell a story, and I just fell in love with it. So then I applied, and then it was tough at first because I wasn't sure. It's not the most common way to live your life. I think it's less stable than common engineering or law, but it's my father's also in the television business in Taiwan, and so in the way they ended up encouraging me later on. But at first it was it was not encouraging. But it's weird because my mom is also involved in the arts, so I think my family's background influenced me, even though rationally they probably want me to do something less artsy.
Less artsy than them.
Yeah, do as they say, not as they do.
Yeah. But what was it that drew you initially to take that 16 millimeter course? Because obviously the seeds were already planted in some ways by your family.
Right.
But what was it about you personally that you realized that, yeah, I want to be an artist too?
I think my love for movies is kind of like a bit, it's a little bit obsessive, and I think it became like so to the point where it had to come out in some way, and I had never had the courage. I'd never taken an art class. I'd never taken any kind of like music, art classes. I had pretty, standard academic life up until then. So yeah. Up until that point, I had a chance to go to grad school, and I just wasn't sure if I wanted to go do something more practical, or something I loved. And so, yeah, I think it just hit a point where it had to be expressed in some way. But yeah, I have an obsessive, all-consuming love for making films and watching films and appreciating movies, which is, your typical film geek.
Yeah, you really have to really have that drive and passion to love what you do.
Yeah.
In this season of life where you are now, what do you feel is your mission as a storyteller?
My mission as a storyteller, I think it's very hard for women directors to get recognition on a bigger stage, and I'd like to achieve that. And I like to make personal films. I really care about films that are well crafted, but that are intimate as well. I think as long as I can make films that people watch and can really relate to, be able to tell my side of stories in my life, my experiences, then I would be, even if I make one movie and only one person in the audience really gets it, really loves it, that means a lot to me. Yeah, to make movies, to be able to find the audience for it, and, to make a difference in film, in cinema, hopefully.
So, who's Lydia?
Oh, that's my mom. So that, yeah, like I said, I think it's weird. I didn't realize this until I was done, and I was like sitting there with my editor, watching this movie for like the 501 times, and we were in the theater, and at that point you're just like dazed because you've seen this movie so many times.
Yeah.
And I think I realized that so much about this movie was inspired by my mom. Just the style, my mom is is a famous dancer in Taiwan. She runs a cultural nonprofit now. She's very feminine. She's very much cares about color and production design, and just the style of the movie kind of suits her. And this did not occur to me until I finished everything. So it was kind of a subconscious connection that I made later on. But yeah, yeah.
And so after watching the finished product, what kind of feedback did Mom have for you?
Oh, I don't know. I think she's like a typical Chinese mom who's like, oh, it's pretty good. It's 不错. It's 不错. It's pretty good.
So with her held back, that means...
She was like, the hotel looked good on film.
So it's her reserved way.
I think that's her way of saying, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, because with some families, it's like... If it's bad, then they'll really let you know. But if it's like super awesome, then it's okay.
Yeah.
It's their way of saying it's really good.
Yeah, I think she appreciated, that I gave props to her. But yeah, it's very much, it's weird. It's weird when even though when I'm watching it like the billionth time, when you see it with a different audience, I see something new, and it's always weird. I'm always embarrassed to watch it with people because it is a big part of how I feel about my mom, and also being home in Taiwan and realizing I'm capturing her style and wondering if I'm becoming my mom or something like that.
So now that this is out there, how would you like to see this particular story continue, if at all? Is there going to be life for more than just the short to the story?
Yes, there initially was a feature treatment, and I don't know. I don't know if that film, I don't know if I would want to do a feature next for this, but it definitely inspired my next project, which is the internet romance based on the online gaming worlds, because I think it's so incredibly different the way it is now. It makes me think about what romance meant before, back in their day, and what romance means now, and what you're losing, how intimacy is something about like the older generation, even with all that time, even with all that distance, there's so much sentimentality that I think that's lost in today's like romance. Like so much of that feeling, these subtle feelings are lost, and I think that movie, I was trying to capture that, because we don't see that anymore. Not in movies and not in real life.
Yeah.
So my next project is sort of a contrast response to that. So I can continue thinking about those themes
through a different
but
story.
It's definitely there's definitely a connecting tissue from that movie to the next one.
So we talked about kind of how you got the idea for the story, but in this case, one of the other challenges I find is, how do you know where to end? Like in this particular short, how did you know how you want the ending to be?
It was, for me, for this film, it was visual. It was like a visual inspiration, because this movie has that old-fashioned sort of extreme repression, extreme tension, extreme holding back. I knew that I knew that it was. I knew where it was going to end, and I knew why it had to not work out. But the way it was not going to work out, to me, I think, is something that we don't see anymore, and I wanted to show that. Something that's been released, but not, it's like a bittersweet. It's not entirely satisfying ever. Not ever satisfying.
Not they live happily ever after.
No, there's always going to be that, I think, tension within them about this lost time.
And then also another challenge with shorts is that you have to really keep it short. You have to cut out parts even if it's near and dear to you. So what were some parts that were near and dear to you that you really liked that you had to sacrifice?
I think probably part of the karaoke bar had some random funny extras doing funny things that I had to like cut out because it was just dragging. It was just too much. But I had some great actors for that scene at the bar, and I shot a little small thing earlier, and I was like, oh, I just can't keep it. But for the most part, I kept all the scenes kind of stayed intact because
you had to be efficient.
Yes, pretty much, as much as possible. I mean, I think if I were to cut it for a more modern feel, I could trim it, but I wanted to have that extreme repression, extreme tension, and extreme, not quite release.
I want to change gears.
Sure.
A lot of times, I'm sure you go to different film festivals, and people, there's so much going on that it's hard to do every single possible thing. But for you, since you're here at the Asian Film Festival of Dallas, how do you like to spend your time here? Like what do you look forward to doing, and how do you make the most of this festival opportunity for yourself, both as a filmmaker but also just as a attendee?
First of all, I love to see all the films. I saw a short experimental shorts program last night and a Korean film last night. I thought they were great, just to get an idea of what the film festival, their taste and their style. And I thought they were great. I thought they were fun. I've met a lot of people. It's a very welcoming festival. I met people. I was in touch with people before I even arrived. So I'm definitely gonna try to talk to as many people, meet as many filmmakers here. I love meeting filmmakers who are, just like me, trying to like make their next feature film, trying to continue making things. And so I like to meet. I love hanging out with filmmakers and people who love film. I could talk about movies all day long. But yeah, and grab some barbecue, grab some queso. Just generally have a good time and get to meet people.
And within the filmmaking community, who are some of your mentors, and what are some takeaway lessons that have already that you've implemented from them?
I had a lot of my thesis advisor is my mentor from USC, and he's his name is Mark Harris, and he's quite well known in the documentary world, and he was very encouraging about just making the movie I want to make. He doesn't exactly have a very common, typical Hollywood filmmaking approach. I think he loves art films. I think he likes foreign films, and so he really supported me just going out to make my movie and not to worry about what other people think. And I think just being able to work professionally with people at Pixar, I learned a lot from the directors there, just how to be a professional, how to continue to work on something until you're happy with it, and just to not give up. That failure happens a lot, and that's just part of the process, and you just have to be tough enough to continue to improve as much as you can. And that's you could be making you could be making amazing movies your whole life, and there's always something to learn about filmmaking. But yeah, I think those are the main things for me personally.
Well, then now we get to the part about criticism. So, do you ever read reviews of your own work from just the non-filmmaking? Like, do you ever read reviews from just the people that you solicit, from the viewers, and so I'll start with that. What's your policy on reading reviews from people?
I mean,
critics.
I guess it's just seeing how the audience reacts is already like a way for you to know how people feel. And I made this movie for myself, and I knew that I was going to showcase what matters to me, what I can, and also what I can do. So at this stage, I think I'm less concerned about criticism.
Okay.
I'm less concerned about criticism even from my peers. But at the same time, I think when you're making a film, getting feedback and getting criticism is extremely important for clarity and for effectiveness of the movie. But once I've made all my decisions and the movie is out there, I'm pretty much happy with what I decide. And so I almost don't care about what people think. I generally don't care what people think because I made this movie for myself.
So that helps you have a thick skin.
A little bit.
That's awesome.
A little bit. Yeah, I think that to be able to defend yourself and defend your own voice is also along the steps with various other mentors is another thing that I learned it's all about the process. It's not the end product, and it's hard to finish some short films when they're longer and they're bigger. It's hard to finish and to keep going and to get it out there.
Because on the one hand, you started the draft with your voice and your thing, but then I'm sure along the way you solicited input and feedback from your people that you looked up to. So it was kind of a team effort in a way.
Yeah.
So you stand by the process.
Yeah, that you defended when you're making movies in Asia, they don't really question your authority on set. In Taiwan, you're sort of, as a director, you're in charge of the show. They don't question you. But in America, what I find very refreshing is that you work with amazing collaborators who are independent thinkers, and they're going to challenge you. And at that stage, I've already stood up for myself, or made compromises, or seen things I didn't see before. And it's all part of deciding, making choices, making the choice you want for your movie. And everything is about making choices when you're as a filmmaker. Every single thing is a decision. Every single thing is like a choice. You learn how to be very, very decisive. So by the time my movie is done, if I decide to release it, that means I'm happy. That's what I want to send out there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, lastly, Charlene, what are the websites where we can learn more about the film and also about you?
Oh, yes. You can go to www.splendourmovie.com. It's Splendor with an O-U-R. And then I'm also a cinematographer, and that's under Charlene Wang, WANG.com.